We are recording.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this AIMS Center webinar on creating and curating OER with confidence. We're so glad that you're joining us this afternoon. A couple of housekeeping details before we get started with the content of the webinar. We are providing closed captions for this webinar. You'll need to look for the closed caption button in your Zoom toolbar, and the captions will then appear along the bottom of your screen. And I want to give a big shout out and thank you to Kara from ACS Captions for providing those captions. So we really appreciate your support, Kara and ACS Captions. We also want to make sure that we have a conversation today, and you can contribute to that conversation by using the chat. There is a chat panel in Zoom. Once you open up the chat panel, make sure that you choose all panelists and attendees from the drop-down menu. That way, everyone can see your message. Otherwise, your message may go to just one individual and the rest of the room won't benefit from your brilliant thoughts. So we want to make sure that everyone can see what you post in the chat. And then we encourage you to share what you learned from this webinar on your social media channels. On Twitter, you can tag us at cast_UDL, that's all in caps. And then we encourage you to use the hashtag AEM, the number 4, and then ALL for all, so AIM for all. So that way we can find those messages on social media. And as Leslie just posted in the chat, this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be available in about a week. It'll be available on the same page where you register for the webinar. But just in case, it's bit.ly/OER confidence. And OER is capitalized and the C in confidence is capitalized. So it is case sensitive. And at that same location where you'll find the recording, there will also be the slides from this webinar and a handout. And the handout will include a number of links that will allow you to access some of the resources that we're going to be mentioning and some of the tools that we're also going to be mentioning. So that would be a great resource for you to take away from the webinar. All right, so I am Luis Perez. I'm a technical assistance specialist with the National AIMS Center at CAST. And our mission at the AIMS Center is to increase both the availability and use of high quality accessible educational materials and accessible technologies. And today I'm joined by one of our great partners, Mindy Boland from ISKME is joining us. And ISKME, for those of you who don't know, I'm going to try to get this right, Mindy. Institute for the Study of Knowledge Management and Education.
Very
Did I
good.
get that right?
Yeah.
All right. So Mindy, that's a lot of words there. So can you explain, first of all, introduce yourself and then tell us a little bit about ISKME and what you all do.
I would be happy to. So I'm Mindy Boland. I'm the Director of OER Services at ISKME. And first, let me just give a little overview of ISKME. ISKME was founded in 2002 as an educational nonprofit, really focusing research on how teachers perform continuous improvement over time. And in 2007, that work resulted in funding from the Hewlett Foundation to develop OER Comments, which launched in 2007. And since that time, we continue to do grant and philanthropically funded research. My team, the OER Services team, runs OER Commons, which is our digital library, our main branch, if you will. We also build what we call microsites, which you can think of as branch libraries as opposed to the main, for different kinds of organizations, higher ed library consortia, departments of education, ministries of education globally. So we do a lot of work to make OER available and findable, all kind of in our mission of equitable access to education.
And that is so important right now. That word
Yes.
Equity keeps coming up.
It certainly does, yes. And accessibility is a key part of that as well, of course.
Absolutely. And before we get going here, I just want to make sure to remind everyone of the goals of this session. So we're going to focus on 3 different things today. We're going to do a quick introduction to OER, Open Educational Resources, just in case you don't have extensive background knowledge in this area. And then Mindy is going to do a demo where she's going to share OER Comments and kind of walk you through some of the features of OER Comments. We're also going to look at some new features in OpenAuthor, or relatively new features that will help you create accessible OER. And that's a big part of the partnership between the AIM Center and CAST and ISKME, is how do we make OER so that they're more accessible, so that they support equity in education by allowing everyone to participate, with equity. And then the last thing is I'm going to introduce a protocol that we've developed for how to curating OER that are accessible. So does that sound good? I think it's a pretty ambitious agenda, but I think we can do it in the next hour. All right, so let's see, just to see where you are on your OER journey, and help us identify what you know already about OER. So let's go ahead and use the chat. Let's say that you had to give an elevator pitch to someone who just asked you, what is this thing that I keep hearing about, OER, Open Educational Resources? What are they? And you just have, let's say, 5 floors. So you've gone into the elevators, and by the time you get to the 5th floor, you have to provide, just a couple of sentences on what is OER. So let's see what you're sharing in the chat. I'll go ahead and voice that for everyone. So Amanda says, affordable and free access to learning content to support students. Materials that teachers can use that are available for free online. That's Alice. Kathy says, any digital materials that are free to the public and use in education. And I see resources that are free, open, editable, share alike. Lots of great contributions coming through, and that's what we love to see. Let's see, freely available to reuse, revise, remix, redistribute, retain. So it sounds like the 5 R's. And Amanda says you can make your own copies, share with others, adapt, copy, modify. So that's speaking to the flexibility of OER for sure. So a lot of you are sort of bringing up some of the benefits already of OER. So that ability to take materials and then customize them to a local context is really powerful. And then remixing, of course, we can add accessibility features as well when we do that. So great, it looks like it's slowed down a little bit in the chat. So let's go ahead and just take a look at one definition. So we can think of OER as teaching and learning materials that reside in the public domain or that have been released with a license that permits a number of things: access, use, adaptation, and redistribution at no cost. And there are a number of different OER licenses. These are just a few of them. And the way that they're shown here on the screen, they're organized by least restrictive to most restrictive in terms of what you can do. So in terms of least restrictive, obviously we have public domain. So these are resources where the copyright has expired, and so that you're able to use them because they're in the public domain. We have licenses like attribution. So the person's giving you permission to use it as long as you provide credit to them, or attribution. And then on the other end, we have a no derivative works license. So you can only share that resource as is. You can't make any modifications to it. Now, Mindy, isn't it right that there is some discussion that maybe this is not exactly OER, that kind of license?
Very controversial, Luis.
That's
yes,
what I do, bring up the controversies.
That is definitely the most restrictive of the Creative Commons licenses. I would personally say that still it's better than nothing, but it is not considered, you can't perform the 5 R's in that situation. So in that sense, not really.
So you can redistribute, but you can't really remix and adapt to your local needs, which is some of the things that some of you have brought up in the discussion there.
Mm-hmm.
So you can think of this as a spectrum. So from public domain all the way to non-commercial, which means you can use it, but as long as you're using it without, making a profit off of it, so non-commercial purposes, all the way to non-derivative or no derivative works allowed, which is really more restricted. Mm-hmm. And OER, there's a range of resources out there. We're probably most familiar with open textbooks or open courses where, the lessons and the different materials within the curriculum are available as open resources. But there are other examples. There's open source software that has been around for, 2 or 3 decades. Linux is a great example there. So the Linux operating system came about as an open source project. There are games and simulations that people make available with an open source license. There are videos that are OER. There's primary sources. A lot of government data sets, for instance, are open resources that you can search and you can adapt and use in your own research. So that's just kind of a little bit of information on OER, just in case you're new to this topic. So let me pause there, see if there are any questions. So go ahead and use the chat. We've already brought up one controversy. So.
What else is there?
So who knows? We might bring up some others in the chat.
I hope so.
So I will just pause for about 30 seconds. If you don't have a question, I will just invite you to take a deep breath. So let's practice some mindfulness. So this is just kind of a quick brain break for you. All right, so it doesn't seem like there are any questions, so we'll just keep on rolling here. Mm-hmm. So how do you get started? All right, so you've gotten off the elevator. You're really excited after talking to someone who gave you that elevator pitch about what OER is and the different licenses and so on. So how do you get started? All right, let's take a look. So I am actually now going to turn it over to Mindy, and she is going to focus on OER Comments. And you'll find OER Comments at oercomments.org. So Mindy, go ahead and I'll stop sharing and I'll let you share your screen.
Okay, sounds good. Let me just get my screen up. Here we go. Okay, so for those of you who haven't been to OER Commons before, I'm going to do a short overview, but I do want to focus mostly today on authoring accessible content and the tools that we've built in our partnership with CAST and the AIM Center. So we will just briefly look at the site as a whole. Anyone can come to OER Commons and use the tools available here. You don't even have to have an account if you just want to browse and search the site. That is available to everybody. So if I log out, I can still look for things. So perhaps I am building something for a physics course. I can do a search. I can filter right here on subject, education level, or if I'm using, I don't think I want preschool though for physics, or I could do standard. So if you are in the K-12 context, you can use these filters to narrow down your search by specific alignment, for example. I can keep searching. I can look at resources. I can filter my search results again by education standards, subject area. You can see here we have 2 levels of our vocabulary for subjects. You can also filter by education level, and then material type. This goes back to what Luis said. There are so many different things that OER can be. It can be a video, it can be a full course. So this is really the list for OER Commons. And if you're asking yourself, what do they mean by lesson? What do they mean by lesson plan? There is always this help widget in the corner, and you can do a search or it'll come right up and you can see our definitions of what those things are so that we're all using the same vocabulary. You are also able to filter on conditions of use. These categories align to the Creative Commons licensing. In fact, we're about to update this view so that they actually specifically have the same language as the Creative Commons licensing and corresponding iconography. So that will be coming in the next few weeks. But for now, you can still generally get a sense of no strings attached, being CC BY, etc. Content source is referring to whether the resource is something that has been indexed from out on the web or something that was created in OpenAuthor. We have OpenAuthor 1.0, which is our older authoring tool, which is in the process of being deprecated. So OpenAuthor 2 is what we're going to look at today. Further down, primary user, media format. I think these are fairly straightforward. The last one here, providers, refers to those different content creators. So Khan Academy, OpenStax, you can search for specific providers here. So if I was looking for, we'll see if Rice is coming. Yeah, so Rice University is OpenStax. And here I can see everything that is coming from their CNX and from their OpenStax college. So that is really search and discovery. If you are a librarian or you're just someone who likes to set up your search criteria at the outset, we do have the advanced search screen where you can go into a little bit more detail. And I'd like to stop a moment on this accessibility section of the search here, because this is something that through our partnership with CAST, we have done a significant amount of research about how educators think about the accommodations that they make for accessibility and how they might think about adding that information to resources. We found this is not really that useful, but we are in the process of continuing our research through another grant, and we're going to be updating the authoring tool to reflect that. And it's going to be more of a contextualized experience. So if you're uploading a video to something you're creating, you'll be asked to, does it have a caption? If not, maybe you should add one. So I want to acknowledge that this is here and you can search by these. I'm not sure you're going to find the results that you're looking for today, but it's something that we are really interested in making a better experience for folks as they are searching for accessible content and making it easier to add that information to the resources that they're bringing onto OER Commons. That said, we have done a significant amount of work on our authoring tool. So I'm going to go to OpenAuthor, which is the authoring tool that is built into OER Commons. Oh, look, I finally hit the point where I have to log in. So it's once you author something, if you're going to create a group, or if you wanted to start saving resources, those are all the moments where you would be asked to log in. This is OpenAuthor. You can see in the top left corner, you can have multiple authors on a resource. So say I wanted to add Luis. I'm assuming he has an OER Commons account. Let's see, there you are. Look at that. All right. I can add him as my co-author. Now he's going to get a notification that I've just added him to that resource. And we can say, here is our AIM webinar. If I had an image, I could put that here. And then you really go into the main core of the authoring tool. So let's say this is our introduction. This is the main content field. In addition to you can have multiple sections. So consider this section 1. And so maybe I'm saying, hello, welcome to my resource, which would be a weird way to start an instructional resource. Maybe you have done all of your work in creating your content in Google Docs or Microsoft OneDrive. If that's the case, you can import from Google Docs. You'll be asked to log into your account, and then you'll be able to go find your document that you want to import. And this is a good one for me to do for this particular demonstration because, one, I have an example document to use, but also, this is also one of the instances where you're going to find this tool that we've just added to our editor something particularly useful. So as a part of our partnership with CAST, we added the accessibility checker to the WYSIWYG editor in OpenAuthor. And because I just imported this from Google Docs, there's a good chance that I haven't done anything about the accessibility of my Google Doc here. So I can click accessibility checker, and it's going to go through each piece of this field and tell me what I need to do to remediate this resource to make sure it's accessible. So because this was imported, there's no alt text on this particular image. So I could say Google Styles menu and fix it right there. Now it's going to say this for, I'm not going to go through every single piece of these, but again, this one needs alt text too. So this is a version history of an OpenAuthor resource. And now it's, oh, look at that. It was only the 2 images. It's a pretty short resource. So those are a couple of the ways that you can test what you're authoring right while you're doing it and then remediate it in the moment. because this was a short one with no tables, or it didn't have any sections really, it didn't demonstrate the full capacity of that, but I think that you get the sense of what you can do. The next step would be if you are attaching resources. So say, for example, you have a video or a PowerPoint or something that's going to go with your authored material. You can add that either as an attachment or a URL and then put the name of it there and save it. So that would kind of flow with the user, with the learner. They'd have access to that attachment. You can also have instructor notes. In fact, your whole resource could be fully instructor notes and not have that main content field. But this is typically used for sharing information with other educators who are going to use your resource. Maybe you have some strategies for how to teach this content to specific learners or different ways that you would approach this content in different contexts. You can share that here with other folks who are going to use your resource. Or if you've remixed this, you could add why you remixed it or information about that. And then you can have another section. So you can go through, you can have as many sections as you like. This could be a very long resource that could go for a whole unit. Really depends on how you want to structure it. I'm going to take that out and go to the next screen. So when you're creating content on OER Commons, one of the things about OER Commons that sets it apart is that we have this structured metadata that we use for each of our resources to make them findable. And when you're authoring or submitting content, you need to add that information. So here I would put my overview. I can't type apparently. There we go. On OER Commons, we have a default license, which is CC BY. So if you don't know, it's already there. You don't have to worry about it. If you actually wanted to put in a different license, we can all frown on this one and then maybe use this one. And we have included what those licenses mean. So if I were to go down and say no derivatives, it's going to say what it is. And then this resource would not be available for remixing. So that's something that's kind of built into the system. My favorite is actually this one. But then further down, you're going to add additional metadata to your resource. So maybe you want to put in your subjects and education levels, material type. Again, you can always access that list of what these mean if you're feeling a little bit flummoxed. And then down here, you can also align it to standards. You can add that accessibility metadata if you feel really confident in these terms. I think they might be a little vague, but if you know that you've got captions and you've got a long description and you've done all of this work, then please do include that information. And you can also add a keyword. The last thing you would do is say that everything you use is allowed, and then you would click publish, and that resource will then go on to our metadata librarians to take a look to make sure that it's meeting these submission guidelines of OER Commons. Now I'm going to do the cooking show technique of pulling an authored pie out of the oven. So let me go here and show you this resource that we've created based on the BC Campus accessibility checklist. So this is like, I love having it be super meta. So I'm going to have my accessibility checklist as my example of an authored accessible resource. It's wild. So this is the accessibility checklist, and it is based on the BC Open Textbook Accessibility Toolkit. And this is what an authored resource looks like. So what we've done here is we've kind of shown some of the best practices for creating accessible content. We have how you might want to organize your content with headings. Heading 1 and heading 2 examples are here. Adding the information about your images that you upload. So we require alternative text, but if you have something that needs to have a more longer description, I would suggest you use the caption in this context because we don't have both alternative text and long description options. So the caption, you can select this checkbox here, and then you're able to add that caption information, which will be picked up by a screen reader. For tables, always make sure that you have headers on your tables. I'm sure there's more than I've got here, Louise, that you know, but with web links, make sure that you're not saying things like click here or just making the word here hot. You know, you want to make sure that the person knows where they're going to go when they click that link. And then here with multimedia, being able to include caption information. On OER Commons, if you upload a video when you're authoring, we host those videos on Kaltura, which has an auto captioning tool, which I think is about 70% accurate. If you have a corresponding SRT file, you can submit a help ticket and I will add that to your video so that you can make sure you've got your captions in there. One of the things that we did in our work with CAST was create a download option on our resources built in OpenAuthor that's EPUB 3, which is a Braille-ready format. And in doing that work, we found that the initial outputs were all just pictures of equations. And we're like, this is not going to work. Who can use these? So we now have the output is in MathML, which is read by screen readers. So that was another benefit of that partnership. Here are some recommendations on fonts that you might want to use and some additional resources. So this whole checklist is available to any of you on OER Commons. I'm not sure if I'll put a link in chat as well. And if you take this and you want to add to it or contextualize it for your specific context, it's available to do so because this is OpenAuthor and you can do it. And I'll show you how in a minute, as soon as I'm done making this chat message. There we go. So now this is a published resource. So I can click remix because it's an open resource. So I click remix. Now here I am and I can see section 1, which is, it's all section 1. I can go in here now that I'm in remixing mode and I can edit this. So maybe I want to say something more about how you should organize your content. If you are importing from Google or Microsoft, use their styles menu, for example. So now I can add to this and make it, you know, something that makes more sense to me, more sense to my learners. So that's kind of a feature of OER Commons that's not just a feature of this particular resource. This remixing really, the reason we like to have resources built into our platform is because users are able to remix them and also export them and get them where they need them. So because this is a remix, I'm not actually going to publish it because I didn't really make that many changes, but you would just go through the same workflow and be able to publish your resource. And then it would be listed as a new version. So you're not messing with the original, you're creating a new version. Another thing, just to give a sense of kind of where we're going in our work with CAST and the AIMS Center, on OER Commons, if you're looking for resources and you don't know where to start, you might look at the hubs page. These are all of the hubs. These are partner sites that we build in OER Commons. We think of them as wings in the library, if we're going to continue with that metaphor. And we're building one now that is all about accessibility and creating accessible content. And we want to include tools and best practices and all sorts of supports for folks who want to take the time to do this work, as I'm sure since you're all on this call, you probably is important to you too. So we're going to be working on that over the summer. We're really excited to be doing more of this partnership with CAST to create that. In the meantime, there's a lot of great stuff here, a lot of great curated resources that are available. And if you want to see what people are using, you can go to the hubs page and kind of get that sense. So if you're someone, maybe you're teaching at a community college, so you want to look at other community colleges, here's Michigan Colleges Online. You can see what they've been curating. Similarly, if you're doing something in K-12, you may want to go and see what Nebraska is doing because they're doing a really great job with their hubs. So there's a lot of work there, and a lot of the OER, a lot of what I think is valuable about OER is that you're not recreating the wheel every time. You are leveraging work that's been done, improving it. Maybe you're making it more accessible. Maybe you're contextualizing it, maybe both. So I just wanted to show you that this work is here for you to leverage and to build upon. I think the last thing I want to mention is that we are doing a significant amount of work at ISKME to make our platform more accessible, and we have been doing it across the main library here at OER Commons and all of our digital libraries. Accessibility is a high priority for us, and it's something that it doesn't seem to ever be done. So I think we will continue working on improving the platform and improving all the different iterations of it for our users and for folks like you. I think for me, that is about it. Is there anything else you want me to cover, Luis, or did I miss anything?
That is a really great overview. So thank you so much, Mindy, and for highlighting so many resources that are available already for remixing, and then some of the accessibility features that are built into Open Author and OER Comments. So appreciate that overview. There are a couple of questions in the chat, so I'll let you catch your breath for a second,
Okay.
or if you want to take a sip of water, I will go ahead and take over the screen. And then we'll open it up. We'll just take a couple of questions here, and then we'll have some more time towards the end where we can catch up with any that we've missed. So give me 1 second here while I get set up again so that I can see the chat. So a couple of questions here. This is from Brett. You've made accessibility enhancements and wanted to share that newly accessible version. So I'm guessing you're asking if you can do that. And I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, I think that was a follow-up from a question Brett put in earlier. What if you are reauthoring or remixing a resource that is already a part of OER Commons? So yes, absolutely. We encourage you to go in and remix resources that you find on OER Commons, or if you find something elsewhere that's openly licensed and you want to bring it into Open Author and make it more accessible there, we welcome you to do that. If you are the original creator of a resource and you want to update your own resource, you'll have an edit button as well as a remix button. So you have two choices there. You can make a new version or you can edit the original. But absolutely, making those kinds of enhancements and letting people know is super, super important.
And as always, make sure you check those licenses.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's see, we'll take one more question here before we go on. So this is from Amanda. Are OER Comments the same as Skill Commons, or are they linked?
Well, no, they both have commons in the name, and that's pretty much the extent of it. Skills Commons was built by Merlot as a part of the TACT grant. So we do have a number of resources that you might find on Skills Commons indexed on OER Commons, but we are not related.
And just to add to that, CAST also played a role in developing the accessibility guidelines for Skills Commons. So that's another place where you'll find some of our work related to accessibility in OER. So I think that's all we have for now. Let me make sure here. Give me 1 second while I advance my slides. I got lost here. But if you have any other questions at any time, go ahead and just share it in the chat, and we will make sure to answer those. All right, so we've looked at what OER are, just kind of the big picture, and then Mindy gave us an excellent overview of Open Author and how you can create your own OER for OER Commons, how you can remix it, how you can add metadata so that, you know, again, it's easier for people to find it and that they can then remix it in turn. And so you can really take advantage of the capabilities of OER in terms of adapting materials so that they match the specific needs that you have in your own environment. So the next thing that we're going to do, Mindy mentioned that checklist that was inspired by BC campus. And we've done some work inspired by that checklist in turn. So how about that for remixing? So remixing, a couple of steps removed. So what I want to do is introduce you to a protocol that we've co-developed for curating accessible OER. So the protocol started with a series of calls that CAS had with the Go Open community. So that's an initiative out of the Office of Educational Technology at the US Department of Education. And we held a number of listening calls where we listened to what the needs of the field were and what some of the concerns were around accessibility. And then based on those calls, we launched an accessibility community of practice on the online Go Open community. So I've shared a link to a recent story that we published where we go over that history, those steps that led to the development of this protocol, just in case you're curious. And again, this protocol was inspired by the school librarian OER curation framework. In that framework, on page 27, there's an accessibility checklist, very similar to the one that Mindy shared. And so we use that as the starting point for this work with the accessibility community of practice of GoOpen. The checklist does a nice job of kind of identifying the best practices, but then you need to take it to another step, which is, okay, how do I ensure that the resource that I'm creating or curating or remixing follows those best practices? So that's what this protocol will do, is take you step by step through the process of confirming that you're actually following those best practices in that accessibility checklist. So there are a number of tools that are discussed in this framework, and I'm going to provide a very similar overview to the one that Mindy just shared. In just a second, I'll share my screen. But the criteria for the tools that were selected for this framework were that they had to be free, they had to be simple and easy to use, because you're more likely to, use it and perform these accessibility checks if the tool provides very little friction for you to get started. And then whenever possible, it needed to be cross-platform. So you could use it whether you're on Windows, on the Mac, on a Chromebook. So we try to pick the number of tools here that met those 3 criteria. And of course, a great place to start is OpenAuthor. And as Mindy showed you, there is an accessibility checker built into OpenAuthor. So if you're creating your resource in OER Comments, you can use the OpenAuthor accessibility checker. And as you're working, you can check to make sure that your images have alternative text, your headings are structured correctly, and so on. Now, if you're creating your resources outside and then importing into OpenAuthor, you may be creating them in Microsoft Word or in Google Docs. With Microsoft Word, there's a built-in accessibility checker. We highly recommend using that accessibility checker. You'll find it in the Review tab of the ribbon. That's the area at the top of the screen in your Microsoft Office programs. And so under Review, you're going to find an option, Check Accessibility. Or if you don't see it there, you can often do a search and just type in the word accessibility and it should bring it up. If you're using Google Suite, there is a tool called Grackle. It's an add-on for the Google Suite, and it does a lot of the same things. It does accessibility checks. And then if you're curating resources from the web, there are a couple of tools that are free that you can use. One is Totally. So that's TOTA, the number 11, and the letter Y. And that's an accessibility visualization toolkit. So it allows you to see how the headings are structured in a website or web page. It allows you to see the alternative text for the images so that you can confirm that the images actually have good alternative text. And then Wave is a basic accessibility checker for web pages. So you can put in the web address into the text field that appears at the top of the Wave website. Or you can also use a Google Chrome or Firefox extension, and it will do a simple check of your web page and let you know if there are any accessibility errors. And then for PDF accessibility, we're also showing you how to use a free tool called the PAC3. It stands for PDF Accessibility Checker in version 3. Now, this is the only tool out of this group that you're limited to one platform because unfortunately it's created by a nonprofit. And so far they've only been able to develop it for the Windows platform. So hopefully at some point they'll get more funding and they'll be able to provide a Mac version as well, so that then all of these tools will be cross-platform. And then there may be a few specialized tools, and the only one that we included in the protocol is a color contrast checker, because that's an important part of accessibility, making sure that the colors have good contrast, the text colors against the background are easy to perceive and have good contrast. So there was a question or comment in the chat. All of these links are available in the handout, and that handout is available from the same page where you registered for the webinar. So if you go to that page, we'll share that link again towards the end. You'll be able to get the recording once it's available in about a week. And you'll also be able to download these slides, which have the links in them. as well as a Microsoft Word document that has the links in there as well. So hopefully that answers your concern or your question. So that will have those resources. So with that, as background information, where did this come from? It's really a remix of an accessibility checklist for librarians. What does it include? It has a number of different free tools that you can use for checking different types of resources, starting with Open Author to make sure that they're accessible. So I'm going to exit out of here, and then I'm going to demonstrate the protocol and then some of these tools. So here, right now, the protocol is in a Google Doc or Google Drive folder, but we have something really exciting in the works, right, Mindy?
Yeah.
So this protocol is going to be one of those first resources that gets remixed into that CAS hub on OER Comments. So we're really excited to make this information available to everyone. And right now it's in Google Drive, and we invite you to take it for a spin and let us know what you think. It's set up to only accept commenting. We don't want you to start changing all of this information, but if you have some feedback, go ahead and use the commenting feature in Google Docs and let us know what you think. So here you'll find the history of the framework, where it came from, what the purpose is, and then how to use it. And to make these techniques more memorable, we're using a mnemonic slide that stands for some of these best practices. So how do you create a document that has a good document, solid document structure? Well, you use styles. So that's the S in slide. How do we ensure that the links are descriptive? And so we have clear navigation between documents and within documents. That's the L in slide for the links. So we want to make sure that the links are not using generic click here or learn more text, but are actually descriptive of the resource that they're pointing to. The I is for images. So again, making sure that images have descriptive alternative text. The D is for design. So looking at color contrast, looking at typography to make sure that the information is perceivable by everyone. And then the final one, the E, is for evaluation. So how do you use an automated accessibility checker that is often now built into a lot of authoring tools, like Open Author, Microsoft Office, to conduct an accessibility check? And then if there isn't a built-in one, what are your options? What can you do? And then we added a sixth component here for video, because not every resource is going to have video. And then sometimes videos may be presented on their own, right? So they may be just a link that points to a playlist or points to a video that's shared on something like YouTube or Vimeo. So again, we invite your feedback. You can use the commenting feature at any time. That will be really, really helpful. So I'm going to follow the same model. Mindy, I'm going to take something out of the oven here. So it's gone into the oven. And I'm going to skip to one of the sections just to show you how they're organized. So for each of these areas, right, in slide, styles, links, images, and so on, it all starts with, why is this important? And because we are part of CAST at the AIM Center, we start with universal design. So how does this not only benefit students with disabilities, how does it benefit everyone? Is really the point that we're making for each of these practices. So you'll see a quick summary. Then we have what to look for, and this is really that checklist, but with a little bit more explanation here as to why it's important. And then you get to pick for each of these areas a different format. So depending on what format that resource is in, you get to choose one of these tools. You can choose Open Author. If you're working in OER Comments, you can choose Microsoft Office, Google Suite, web pages, PDF documents, and I'm sure at some point we're going to add EPUB as well. That's a format that we would like to see more and more content being shared in. EPUB is really optimized for accessibility. So let me just show you one of these here. This is for Open Author, and this is a lot of the information that Mindy has already shared with you. So How do you check to make sure that the headings have the proper styles assigned to them? Well, you can use the built-in accessibility checker, and it walks you through how to do that and how to even perform a quick check or a quick fix so that you have the right heading structure in the content that you're creating with OpenAuthor. Microsoft Office, right, has a built-in accessibility checker, and that gives me an excuse to show you the handout. So I'm going to bring up the handout. This is what you will get if you go to the events page for this webinar. This is a handout that we created in Microsoft Word. And just to show you, you can go to the review tab in this version of Office that I'm running here, and I can do check for accessibility. Now, here's a question I'm going to post in the chat, just to be provocative. It says, no accessibility issues were found. People with disabilities should not have difficulty reading this document. Does that mean that this document is 100% accessible? So I'll let you answer in the chat. Okay, we have some people answering. Alice says no. All right, so I will let you, but Alice, you're on the right path. Deb, you're on the right path here. This is an automated accessibility checker. And what that means is it's gonna catch most things, but it's not perfect, right? And so it's a great way to check your work as you're going along, but by no means does it mean that if it passes here and it says, you know, no accessibility issues were found, that doesn't mean that something didn't sneak through. So that's why that protocol has even more detailed information on the best practices. So again, review, check accessibility, and then a pane will open up on the right side. And if I had an error here, it would show me where that error can be found in the document and then how to fix it. If I go back to Google Docs doesn't have a similar checker, but there is a tool called Grackle. And so I've already, to save us some time, I've run Grackle on this document. And look at that, I only have one error. The document title is required, so I didn't have that in my document. So again, that doesn't mean this is a perfect document. It just means it didn't find some of those obvious errors. But I always tell people, make sure you do a manual check, because even the best automated checkers often, you know, missed a few things here and there. Wouldn't you agree with that, Mindy?
I would. Absolutely.
So whether you're in Microsoft Word, your school, you know, different districts adopt, you know, different platforms. So if you're in Microsoft Office or in Google Suite, there are options for checking the accessibility of resources, and the protocol walks you through step by step. So you can see it's all illustrated with screenshots and explanations so that you can see that. Future development is to include some videos on here, because people learn in different ways. So the AIM Center is based at CAST, and we know that people take in information and are able to process it in different ways. So we may add some short videos here that demonstrate some of these techniques. In terms of other tools that are highlighted in this protocol, one of my favorite tools here, if you're on the website and you want to just kind of get a quick sense of how accessible it is, there is a tool called Totally, and it's from Khan Academy. So Mindy mentioned Khan Academy already. They produce a number of videos. It's a great place to learn math, but they've since expanded to other topics, economics, philosophy. There's different videos in their collection. So Khan Academy created Totally, and what it lets you do is it brings up a menu. And what I like about this, a lot of it corresponds to slide. So for instance, we can see the headings in this document. So it's basically a visualizer. So it lets me know that this is a heading level 1. And then if I scroll down, I have heading level 2s down here. So we want to make sure that those are in the right order to create a logical structure. The L in slide, right? We can look at the link text, and it will highlight any links that have non-descriptive link text. I can do the same thing for the image alt text. So again, it's a great way to come in here, and it's giving us a warning there. So it says this image is decorative. What that means is it's just an icon. It's not essential for meaning. And so it should be skipped by a screen reader. So that's actually correct. That's why it says it's decorative. So again, this is the kind of tool that we built this protocol around. It's something that is free, simple to use, simple for us to explain so that you can actually implement it. I won't demo the PDF accessibility checker because, as I said, I'm on a Mac and that is a Windows only version. It does look a little intimidating when you first launch it, but it's actually pretty easy to use. So if you follow the directions in the protocol, you should have no problem with learning how to use the PAC3 accessibility checker for PDF. The last thing that I wanted to show you here, another tool that we shared in the protocol, is the color contrast analyzer. And it's a simple color picker that allows you to pick two colors and then see whether they pass the color contrast requirements under the accessibility standards. So that's another tool that's in that protocol. So we've built this protocol around these tools, and then it includes those instructions for how to use them to check the accessibility of different resources, whether it's an open author or in different authoring tools. So let me stop, actually, let me not stop sharing. I'm gonna bring back the presentation. And again, I'll bring up the screen, so just in case you already forgot the name of some of those tools, there it is. So starting with the built-in accessibility checker in Microsoft Office, Grackle for Google Suite, a couple of accessibility checkers for the web, Totally from Khan Academy, and the Wave Web Accessibility Evaluation Tool from WebAIM, PAC3 PDF Accessibility Checker. And links to all of those are available on the handout for this webinar. So let me open it up, see if there are any questions. We have about 8 minutes. So any questions that you have around OER, around accessible OER, this is a great time to ask them. You have quite a bit of expertise in Mindy here, so take advantage of it. Let's see, Amanda has a question here. Is there any accessibility checker for color in Word or PowerPoint? I would highly recommend that color contrast analyzer from the Pacella group. I generally open that up and just leave it open on the side, and I can use it in any tool, whether it's a website that I'm working on or Microsoft Word. That will allow you to check those colors, make sure that they meet the contrast requirements. It's often built into other tools as well. So for instance, Wave, the web accessibility evaluation tool from WebAIM, it will also identify anything that's missing or not meeting the color contrast requirements. And Mindy, does, I can't remember, does Open Author check for color contrast?
That is a great question. I think that our published resources, you can't change the colors of the copy, so it wouldn't be at a risk really, unless you're putting an image in that doesn't have color contrast. So
right,
black on white. And
Brandon says Office 2019 does flag suspect color. So again, you know, some of those accessibility checkers, they get updated occasionally, and as the features improve, they add, you know, there's more that you can do. So that's great to know that Office 2019 will flag suspect color. Any other questions related to OER accessibility? Or OER in general, or OER comments? Go ahead and post them in the chat. And again, our hope is that you will take this protocol for a spin. You will use it on your own resources that you're sharing, that are OER, that you're remixing, and then provide us with feedback, and look for later this summer for this resource to be released on OER Comments on the CAS Hub. So it looks like we're wrapping up. People are already saying their thank yous. I do have a few announcements. So as you think of questions, feel free to share them in the chat, but I will make a few announcements just to wrap things up here. So the first one is the AIM Center is currently recruiting for states that will be part of our new cohort. So this is a cohort that will receive comprehensive focused technical assistance at no cost from the AIM Center. And we will work with those states and districts. There will be some districts within each state that's selected as well for a 4-year period from 2020 to 2024. And the application deadline to be part of the AIM cohort is coming up on July 1st. So if you think your state would be a candidate for that cohort, help us spread the word. Full details are available on our website. There's an entire page that explains what the cohort is all about, how it works, and then the application is linked to from the website as well. So we look forward to selecting those states and working with them to really implement accessibility best practices and scale them up. We have some additional upcoming webinars, and I apologize. I'm visually impaired and my eyes are bothering me because I've been looking at the screen for a while. So if you see me blink or put my finger in my eyes, that's why. So we have a number of upcoming webinars on June 15th. We're going to look at personalizing the writing experience. This is a follow-up to a webinar we did earlier this spring on personalizing reading. And so now we're going to look at the other side of that coin, the writing experience. And then on June 22nd, we have a special guest. Microsoft is going to be presenting on its accessibility features across the Microsoft suite of tools. So that's really exciting. We invite you to join us for that webinar. And then also we call these webinars enhanced webinars because it's not just a webinar presentation. We wanted to make it into a more active learning experience. And so today at 4:30 p.m., you are able to join us for what we call office hours, for lack of a better name. And so that is a time where you could ask any questions that you have, or if there's anything that you want us to sit down with you and provide some guided practice on any workflow, for instance, that you're interested in pursuing related to accessibility and AIM, we're happy to sit down with you. It's a first come, first served basis, so you may have to wait for another person's question to be answered, but I'll be there for about an hour, and so we're happy to help you with your accessibility related questions. So that will be today at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, and Leslie just included the link in the chat. We invite you to stay connected, not just with CAST, but with our awesome partners at ISKME. So I've shared the contact information, and Leslie's also going to post it in the chat. You can follow us on social media. Mindy's on social media as well. She's at, I love this Twitter handle, at OER_Maven. And then OER Comments itself, it's at OER Comments. So great sources of information related to OER, OER Comments, and OER accessibility. So I want to end here, since we only have a couple of minutes, by giving you all a big thank you for joining us this afternoon. Thank you so much to Kara for providing the captions, and ACS Captions. They always do such a great job. And a big thank you to Leslie for monitoring the chat and also posting all of those links right on time, just as we mentioned them.
She really was on it.
She's Johnny on the spot and post those links into the chat. And the final thing is, we appreciate your feedback. We're always trying to improve these webinars and make sure that they're as responsive as possible to your needs and the needs of the field. So there is a brief survey. Leslie just posted the link in the chat. So if you could just take a couple of minutes and then just share your feedback related to this webinar, we really appreciate that. We will stick around for another minute or so, but otherwise, thank you so much. And as always, stay healthy and happy, and we'll see you on another webinar.
Thanks.
And thank you so much, Mindy. We really, really appreciate your time and your expertise when it comes to OER.
My pleasure.